I'm interrupting this video with a brief mid-roll promotion. I wanted to talk to you guys about readings. I'm currently doing natal chart readings and interpretations. So if you would like a personalized video reading that is private and only sent to you, covering your personality, your talents, as well as your financial astrology, and then your destiny or your soul's purpose, which would be based on the North Node placement and the rulers of that, then check the email in my description, which is readings@astroseri.com, and go ahead and send me an email if you would be interested in booking a reading. I also offer aspect table readings, meaning all of the aspects that are in your chart and what they mean. And finally, I offer synastry readings, which is about love and compatibility. For the most part, everybody that I've done a reading has been amazed with the results and has greatly benefited, at least half of whom have left a donation after the reading to show their appreciation, or have purchased a second reading for somebody else or for additional questions that they had. Now, my readings go in depth, so it is not for the faint of heart. So if you do not want to know how you really are based on your chart, then the readings are not for you. If you would like an interpretation of your chart by me, then definitely feel free to send an email. Let me know which type of reading that you're interested in, and we will work things out from there. With that being said, let's get back into the topic of this video. Thank you. Today, we're going to be talking about Saturn in Virgo and what this placement means for you, as well as covering what it means through each of the houses. Saturn in Virgo shows somebody that is careful and extra pragmatic. Saturn is the planet of lessons and karma, and when it's in Virgo, it teaches one to have to be thorough and committed in a certain area of life, depending on which house this placement is in. Those born with this placement are careful and extra pragmatic. They will tend to be a little bit slower in their work process and in their productivity because Saturn slows things down wherever it's at, and it gives them a careful and hardworking approach. On the other hand, though, these individuals are capable of masterworks of craftsmanship and whatever craft that they're doing, because they have this energy of patience or dedication that they either are born with or that they learn through restrictions or obligation of life. There is a need or a tendency to be particularly thorough and disciplined about their health, their habits, or their work lives, because Virgo is about health and lifestyle. And those born with this placement may experience restrictions regarding those topics. They will manifest situations often where they have to be responsible, committed, and carry an outcome through to the end, which usually takes long hours or hard work or consistency over time, over days, weeks, or months, for the example of health. Since Virgo is about particularities, it's about the mind and it's about changing factors because it's ruled by Mercury, these individuals that have this placement could frequently experience stress or worry whenever they are not extra pragmatic about important decisions, work, or responsibilities. It has a tendency to only create more work down the line with more unforeseen factors, sometimes having to start all over again when they were not careful the first time. These individuals could fear the unknown or certain factors being out of their control. In fact, part of their responsibilities in life and their work could be having to deal with factors that are out of their control, therefore having to take organized or practical approach to accomplish their work, just due to the nature of the work. This placement dims faith, open-mindedness, and optimism. Saturn forces you to be grounded and take a down-to-earth approach to your success and to your ambitions. It creates long hours and consistency in order to achieve your highest success, because Saturn rules the 10th house, which is about our legacy and our success. So now we're going to talk about what this placement means through each of the houses. If you have Saturn in Virgo in the first house, this is about your approach and your perception. Saturn in Virgo becomes your approach to life and the way that you perceive things, and a lot of your actions involve a careful and pragmatic approach. And there's also emphasis on self-development when Saturn is in the first house, because the first house is about ourselves. So you may spend a lot of time developing your own health, your own appearance, your own success or confidence through hard work or dedication. Next, if you have Saturn in Virgo in the second house, this is the house of resources and finances. So often these individuals will experience financial restrictions throughout life that are only rectified through thoroughness, frugality, and long hours at their work. Because Virgo is about work, and Saturn brings reward when you are committed to your work. And often it will make you work longer hours or harder than your peers. Individuals with Saturn in the second house are also quite business savvy, and you guys are savvy in the financial sense because you have a attention to details. You guys are pragmatic. Next, if you have Saturn in the third house, what this is about is it's about communication and the mind. Saturn in the third house can bring about negative or fearful thoughts. And since it's in Virgo, this is about being too stressed, critical, or pessimistic. The third house is also about speech and communication. So these people can be more serious communicators. The reason why is because the third house not only shows how we communicate verbally, but non-verbally through our facial expressions and whatnot. So they could have a more cold communication style or more serious, less expressive. Saturn also restricts speech, so they could have some people that have this placement could have speech impediments, or this placement can restrict your speech or your thought until you are absolutely sure of yourself. Because Saturn in Virgo shows the fear of things being out of their awareness or their control. So a lot of times in the third house, this manifests as not wanting to speak their mind because they doubt their mind because they feel certain things are not sure or are not certain. And that might make them more introverted or men or women of few words. Next, if you have Saturn in Virgo in the fourth house, this placement shows that Saturn has put his rings around your emotions and your vulnerability because of a more emotionally and interpersonally skeptical nature. Virgo Saturn brings about skepticalness and being overly realistic or practical. Those with this placement will have a tendency to be really organized and logical about their feelings, and this can make them feel cold or guarded or lack warmth to others. Next, if you have Saturn in Virgo in the fifth house, this is about a wounded ego and self-worth because Saturn puts his rings around your confidence, and Saturn is the planet of limitations, fears, restriction. So there are fears or restrictions around one's capabilities and confidence when Saturn is in the fifth house. And since Saturn is in Virgo, it's showing somebody that may spend a lot of time on self-development, working on certain skills such as speech or self-expression in order to gain confidence. And it's only through practice and repetition that they are able to rectify this lack of confidence and actually become a more confident version of themselves. They have a more serious character or demeanor as well because the fifth house is about our character, and Saturn is more cold, non-expressive, and serious. This placement shows people who work very hard to prove themselves in the world. And a lot of times the wound around the ego or self-worth comes from their upbringing and the relationship to the family. Next, if you have Saturn in the sixth house, the general meanings of Saturn in Virgo may resonate more strongly because the sixth house is the house of Virgo as well. So you have double Virgo energy with this placement. And the sixth house is about routines, tasks, or work life. And this house also touches on health and habits. So a lot of times Saturn will manifest as restrictions that come from work and having to spend long hours accomplishing tasks or responsibilities. And there may also be restrictions or challenges due to health and lifestyle habits and having to be thorough about your health, thorough about your lifestyle. You know, this could be any type of restriction that comes from health. Certain things that might limit your other actions may come from having to pay attention to your health or having to spend more hours at work or something like this too, because the sixth house is about work. Next, if you have Saturn in Virgo in the seventh house, this is about relationships and how you relate to others and what makes us relatable. Those that have this placement have to work hard upholding their agreements to others. because Saturn is exalted in the 7th house and it's all about trust and agreements. And Saturn is also having to do with our professional lives. So there can be something of a professional nature that causes you to have to gain the agreement or the favor of others in life. You do so by fulfilling this need to be thorough, practical, and grounded in your communication or in your responsibilities for the sake of others. And you do this in order to gain their agreement, to gain their trust or their support. That is Saturn in the 7th house in Virgo. And often this manifests as interpersonal responsibilities, relationships that require work from you and stuff like that. Maybe even relationships to the public or relationships to colleagues or something. Next, we have the 8th house, which is about factors that are out of one's control. So if you have Saturn and Virgo in the 8th house, you will have a tendency to worry or experience pressures from life that cause you to worry. The 8th house is about debt, so there's an emphasis on rectifying debts with this placement, cutting off bad habits and situations as well, because the 8th house is about negativity, toxic situations. Ultimately, Saturn in the 8th house is causing a responsibility to get more independent and to experience more freedom from cutting off bad habits and situations and rectifying debts. Because again, the 8th house is about things that are out of our control, and it's about power struggles, and it's about survival. So a lot of times it manifests as experiencing a lot of pressure from life that for you causes a lot of responsibilities. You are meant to experience more independence and freedom through self-development, organization, and transformation. Most importantly, you may experience more control in your life and more positive developments when you dedicate yourself to your work or to your career, and you spend long hours at work or long hours being productive or consistent. That's how Saturn rewards you. And it can be a very energetically taxing placement to have when it's in Virgo, which is about all those things, and it's about work. Next, we have the 9th house. So if you have Saturn and Virgo in the 9th house, this placement restricts faith and optimism, as well as adventure and risk-taking, due to fear or an overly realistic or practical or critical viewpoint of life. You may have difficulty with things such as risk-taking or faith. And more importantly, it shows somebody that has very realistic and grounded beliefs. And they believe in structure, tradition, government as well, because Saturn is the planet of government. So these individuals are not rebels by nature. They will usually believe in authority. A lot of times they are ambitious, and they will also appeal to the hierarchy by trying to gain the highest position of authority that they can in their work lives. But ultimately, this placement indicates limiting beliefs, because the 9th house is about beliefs. And you are meant to overcome these beliefs in this lifetime and experience more optimism and risk-taking. Now, next, this takes us to the 10th house. So if you have Saturn and Virgo in the 10th house, dedication to your work life is required to uphold your responsibilities. And since Saturn restricts things, how it manifests when it's in the 10th house, which is its natural house, is that these individuals might experience restrictions to their personal life, to their personal interest, and to everything else due to having a lot of responsibilities or a lot of work type of things to cater to. Because Saturn is naturally in the 10th house. He feels comfortable in this house. For them, like, their work life can be the restriction rather than, experiencing restrictions in another sense. So anyway, also, in order to achieve your highest success, abnormally long hours will be required. You have very little margin of error in your profession, your position, or your reputation when you have Saturn in the 10th house in Virgo. Next, if you have Saturn in Virgo in the 11th house, this is about becoming more independent through hard work and one's work life. There could also be fears around change and unexpected change in particular, because the 11th house is the house of Aquarius and it's ruled by Uranus, which is about shocks, rebellion, revolution, or change. Also, the 11th house is about the things that we participate in. It's about groups, friends, and individuality. So there could be fear around friends, around fitting in, and around your individuality due to self-criticism and perceived flaws within yourself, or being like overly critical of yourself, because Virgo Saturn makes somebody quite critical. Also, you best manifest friendships with people that you guys work with, like people that you guys can have a common cause or a professional goal together, because you guys can both share this practical and serious nature and ambition. Ultimately, you may experience restrictions to your friends or to your personal interests due to having a lot of work or something like that as well. Ultimately, you're meant to become more independent through working hard and gain more financial freedom as well. A lot of factors that are out of your control or that feel like they're out of your control can cause you to stress or worry about change and not want to make change, or not, feel rebellious or individualistic. And you might be more comfortable in a certain mundane way of life or habitual way of things being that causes you not to want to shake the boat, or what's the word for that? Not to ruffle the feathers in any way. So again, Saturn in the 11th house can show this fear around individuality or standing out and being unsure of whether they fit in. So anyway, that is Saturn in the 11th house. Finally, if you have Saturn in Virgo in the 12th house, which is about our perception, our imagination, and our subconscious, this is a difficult placement where Saturn is creating a fearful perception or imagination of life or of things. And you make a lot of fearful assumptions. You always assume the worst. And the 12th house is about things that have not yet realized. It's about everything that's non-physical. It also encompasses the future, like how we imagine or perceive the future. So Saturn creates a negative imagination of the future, or like a fearful imagination where you always assume the worst. And this is due to the placement of Virgo in this case, because that's the sign that's in your 12th house. Virgo is about being overly critical or realistic and pessimistic. Ultimately, this placement just shows limiting beliefs that have to be overcome through spiritual self-development. So working around the subconscious and being aware of one's assumptions and beliefs and perceptions. Generally, these people will be quite realistic people in terms of their imagination. So they can get very comfortable with a way of life or with their way of perceiving things, and nothing will necessarily push them or force them to change other than their own happiness or unhappiness. And generally, there could be fears around the subconscious and around facing such things, because Saturn is about fear. There could be a fear around spiritual topics, around being open-minded, because you believe that Virgo, which is factors that are changing or that could be out of your control. So you believe basically that Virgo things like can happen. So what that means is like things that are out of your control can stress you out and cause you like to fear diving into the subconscious and into spiritual topics. So anyways, Saturn, when it's in Virgo, shows hard work and consistency brings good results. So practice, habits, and repetition will rectify the limiting beliefs that have to be overcome. So it's going to take a lot of like repetitive self-talk, repetitive change to your mind and to your thought patterns, your way of thinking, in order to rectify certain limiting beliefs, especially if they're affecting more personal aspects of your life, such as relationships and other things than just work or your professional life or your goals. So with that being said, that is Saturn in Virgo through each of the houses. I hope that you guys enjoyed and that this was insightful. And if you did, then don't forget to leave a like on this video and subscribe to this channel if you'd like to see more content and you would like to see your other placements when they come out. With that being said, if you would like a natal chart reading where I go more in depth and cover each of your placements as a whole, give you an overall viewpoint of who you are, your life purpose, your strengths and your weaknesses, and how you stand out in the world, then click the link in the description, which is to my website, AstroSeri.com. Feel free to book a reading. I also have a Patreon where I post a weekly podcast, and I also have a higher tier where I do financial predictions and talk about cryptocurrencies using astrology. So if that interests you and you would like to support this channel, that's a good way to do so, is by checking out my Patreon. With that being said, I appreciate the support.
and you guys watching and leaving a like, subscribing. And with that being said, I'll talk to you guys sometime soon in another video. Peace.